Well, let's do this, I guess. I don't really know how to start this, considering that this is a really new format. So, hi, I'm Chara5. You guys know me as Chara5, have for a really long time. I'm very awkward. Even as someone who has streamed for a really long time, I think it's easier just because like people there know me by name and they see that side of me every time I do stream. And this is part of a thing that I wanted to do for a while, and it's not exactly like, as you can tell, it's not like a scripted thing. It's not an everything wrong with. It's not a what I've thought about. It's somewhere in between. And if you've seen my stuff before, first of all, if you're new, hi. This isn't really a podcast. This is something. It's a combination of a lot of different things. I guess some context for those of you that care or might not care. If you don't care, feel free to like skip to whatever point in the video I actually get into the discussion. But I've wanted to make a video like this for a little bit because I didn't really want to go in the direction of making an everything right with properly. That for a while I kind of wanted to do that, but then I don't know. It didn't seem appealing to me. Like I enjoy doing the what I've thought about, but those are so structured and they require so much editing, and it's weird how much more fake what I've thought about feels compared to an everything wrong with, because I feel like an everything wrong with it's sort of based on negativity, and you know, on YouTube that's kind of the standard. Like when it comes to comedy, you focus a lot on the negative because I mean it can get a rise out of you, it can be really funny. I think that's just been weighing me down a lot in terms of just, I guess, my mental health, but at the same time, just physically, like, I dread almost doing everything wrong with now, just because, I mean, and I don't dread it, I still have fun with it, but like, there's this sense of like, okay, I can't really enjoy the game for what it is because I gotta be on the lookout for things that I need to make fun of or that I need to, you know, make a comment on. And so it's so difficult to just find enjoyment out of it now, even if it is a game that I've been enjoying. Like I look back on the Mario RPGs that I've been doing this year, and those have been really fun, and I've been focusing on just doing that. But the focus of this video that I want, like the first entry of what I hope is going to be something that you guys come back for, I wanted to do something positive, and I wanted to start that off with a game that, you know, is widely considered to be a stain in like the Sonic franchise. It's been a while since I've like really talked about a Sonic game, considering that like I've done most of the Sonic games at this point in a video form. But I think it would be really cool because for the longest time people asked me to do an everything wrong with on Sonic 06, and after I did it, it just felt like, okay, well, I've sort of broken that barrier. I went all out for it, and there's not really much else to say. But I thought like, okay, I really want to dig deep and find like the things that I enjoy about it, because again, I really want to focus this on something that's more positive. I think that we don't have enough positive, or at least like positive content isn't particularly always viewed in the same vein, because like, again, like I said, when it's negative, it's comedic, it's funny, you want to keep coming back for that because, you know, there's more stuff to say when the experience is not as positive. But I think we could all benefit from a little bit of that positivity, like seeing the good in the bad, and that's why I wanted to tackle Sonic 06 first, is because I feel like that's the sort of stepping stone or whatever into just like what good could you say about something that's so hated, you know? And the reason I didn't want to structure it like with a script or anything is because I feel like that would just, it would get too confusing, it would take me too long to make, and it wouldn't flow as well. I wouldn't get my thoughts across, I think, as poignantly. And that's the thing, like this isn't like a review, this isn't a video essay. It's just somewhere in between all those things. It's somewhere in between of what I've thought about and everything wrong with a video essay, because I could go into depth about why like I like all these things, but at the same time, it's so subjective that you probably wouldn't agree with me, and you don't have to agree with me. And I think that's partly the beauty of this too. Like, I was telling my girlfriend earlier today that I was not having a great day because I was stressed out about so many things. And then I sat down and started like doing an outline of the things I wanted to talk about for this video, and I like automatically felt better. And it's because it's something that I'm passionate about. It's something that it's something new. It's something that like, not necessarily that it challenges me, but it almost comes from a place of comfort, and it's something that I'm excited to do. With the everything wrong with for a while, it's not that I don't enjoy doing them, but it's become so methodical that like I kind of just do it almost on autopilot now. And so while it's easy in a way, like the hard part comes from just enduring doing it. And with this, it's just like, editing is probably going to be a nightmare for this. I don't know how I'm going to edit this, but at least I'm probably going to have a good time. And I think that that's mostly why I'm so like excited to talk about these things and what I like about the Sonic 06. So the first thing that I noticed was because like the opening cutscene happens, and I noted down that visuals for the CGI cutscenes are nice, and that's true in as far as like if you take a screenshot of any given like CGI cutscene, I think it really stands up even to this day, and I think that it was a good starting point for CGI cutscenes that they do in the future for stuff like Sonic Unleashed. Sonic Unleashed has like one of the most beautiful intro cutscenes of all time. Or maybe not of all time, but at least in like Sonic, it's beautiful. And I think that really started with what they were going for with 06. Like there's so many times where I would just like pause and be like, this looks great. And then I'd see it in motion and be like, oh, that's not, that's not that great. I really don't want to focus on like meh points or like even things that are not that great in comparison. I want to focus on like things that I really like. I think the visuals in the CGI cutscenes, even for a 2006 game, I think they still kind of hold up today. Even looking at them again, mostly as screenshots, because Sonic 06 is probably one of the ugliest games in Sonic history. I've played almost all of them, and I can safely say that that's one of the ugliest games in the series. But there's something about the softness about the CGI cutscenes and the models and the way that they were composited, and just a lot of it that I really, really like. That, you know, the way that they were done. And it's tough to go in order, because like now the thing I want to talk about is like the hub worlds, and the hub worlds are really nice. Like they're nice in the sense that they're back, because Sonic is something that I think a lot of us sort of agree that we could do without them. We don't really need hub worlds in a Sonic game, but it's so interesting that they brought them back from Adventure 1, because we had Adventure 2, we had Heroes, we had Shadow. Like those are the games that are in between Adventure 1 and 06, and you know, none of those had hub worlds, and people like they like Adventure 2, they like Heroes. I don't really know where people stand on the hub worlds in Adventure 1. You know, like, I know people like Station Square, but in terms of, like, the concept of a hub world, I don't know what people's opinion of that is, but I think that it's kind of cool that they did bring them back, because it's not much. You know, like, Soliana is the best of all the hub worlds that we have. And I think the thing I like the most about it is just how lived in it feels. I think even more than Station Square, because Station Square, like you see the cars, you see people, and the people just kind of stand there. They don't really walk around. And not that they walk around in Soliana or whatever, but like there's something about Soliana that feels a bit more lively. No, there are people that are walking around, I think. Like there are a few NPCs that are walking around, but you know, you definitely feel like, oh, okay, this is a town, you know, compared to Station Square. Station Square feels weird. Like it's a mini, it's supposed to be a city, but it feels so small. Whereas Soliana, it definitely feels bigger, and it is lively, you know, but like there are moments where, or there are sections in the game where there just is nothing, and so like it feels kind of empty, but at the same time, there's this weird twilight where like I like Soliana and I don't like Soliana. On the whole, I think I really do like that they have the hub worlds again, particularly Soliana. The other hub worlds, you know, in the surrounding areas, I don't like as much, but Soliana is like a good go here, go there. I do wish there were more things to do in it, and that it were probably a little bit more interesting, but at the same time, like, I still like that they're there. There are a number of reasons why I feel like 06 is an Adventure 3 of sorts, and I know that I probably just pissed off a lot of people by saying that, because I think, like, people think Unleashed is Adventure 3, or Heroes is Adventure 3, or that, like, none of them are Adventure 3 and they're still, like, waiting on a new adventure game. But it really, the more I thought about it, the more I sort of realized that 06, even if they never meant for it to be Adventure 3, it's still Adventure 3, like, in a lot of ways. Like, there's a lot of elements to the game that make it Adventure 3. And I think that that's why, like, I know it's a bad game. Like, I feel like I should have said that at the beginning of the video, is that, like, I know it's a bad game. I'm not at all saying, like, oh, here are the reasons I like it, because it's a good game, or like, this is why it's underrated. It's like, no, I know it's a bad game. That nothing's going to change the fact that it's a glitchy mess, and it was rushed, and it's ugly, and like, there's a lot that's bad about it. But I think going into that, or going into the game knowing that it's bad, sort of helped me not be as harsh on it. And I appreciate, like, the things about it that I see in other games that I do love, because like I love Adventure 2. I think a lot of people who grew up in that era love Adventure 2, and we probably have nostalgia glasses for it. But when I think about its structure, when I think about the way that the game is, it just is Adventure 3. You know, like, and I've wanted to make this video for a really long time, and I kept thinking about like how I was gonna, because that was gonna be a separate video too. I think I wanted to make a video about how 06 is Adventure 3. But then I kept thinking about like how Heroes kind of fits that bill too, in that, you know, multiple playable characters, and like each character, like you have different stories that all end in like a final story where they all come together and work together, where, you know, the Chaos Emeralds are part of the story, and you go super for the final boss, Eggman teams up with you, whatever. Like all these elements are still true in Sonic Heroes, but Sonic Heroes is, and I'm gonna probably make a lot of, ironically enough, comparisons between 06 and Heroes, which you would not expect, but I think a lot of them stem from relating them to Adventure and Adventure 2. You know, Adventure 1 had 6 playable characters you could choose from, and the final story. Adventure 2 has only 2 stories that you can choose from, but it still has 6 characters. You still play as 6 different characters, but there are only like 3 different play styles. So you have like the speed character, the treasure hunting character, the mech character. There's 6 characters, but like 3 of them play the same, you know? With Heroes, you have 12 playable characters, but they all basically function the same. Even if they have like unique traits, they all like really, they all work the same. And for 06, you know, they don't really focus on your partner characters, but you still have 3 different campaigns with a final story, and, you know, it has all those elements of an adventure game. And you still play as like those separate characters, each with their own like traits that they get from the Adventure series, particularly because like when you think about it, you have like Knuckles is gliding, and, you know, like climbing on walls, the way that Tails can fly throughout the stages. Like those are things that you could technically do in Heroes, but I think the team aspect of Heroes makes it fundamentally different. Whereas the adventure games, like even though you can go to like the Chow Garden and you can see like how Tails flies around in that, that's kind of how Tails does it in 06, and the different characters that you play as, and they each have their own like play styles. The only difference is that this time they're like within the game itself. I don't know, like there's just there's so much about it. Like in terms of the action stages, in terms of how those are sort of laid out, they remind me a lot more of the adventure games, because Heroes was a lot more fantastical. Whereas, I mean, not to say that like Adventure and Adventure 2 weren't fantastical, but like there was an element of quote-unquote realism to them, like cartoony realism. Because when you think about it, like Heroes didn't have human characters. Shadow did, but Shadow almost feels like it's in its own like sort of world. But Heroes definitely felt more like it was a traditional Sonic game. And 06 sort of goes back to that, like, okay, we're in a sort of realistic world that's fitted to these Sonic characters, and it just feels more related to the adventure games than Heroes does, and certainly more than Unleashed does too. And Unleashed sort of has elements of like an adventure game too. It's called World Adventure in Japan, but it doesn't feel like an adventure game thematically, at least. Like there are a lot of story beats that are like, yeah, this is, I mean, you could argue the same things, like the Chaos Emeralds losing their power and stuff, but I don't know. That's something that I really like about it, is that in terms of feel, in terms of gameplay, in terms of just theming, in terms of, there's a lot that it reminds me of the adventure games of, and that, like in a good way, not in a bad way. Like it doesn't grab the negative elements of the adventure games. I think that it takes like the positive things about the adventure games, even if it doesn't execute them as well. It doesn't execute them nearly as well or as fun. It returns to a familiar formula, which has like different campaigns that have different perspectives on the same story. Like Heroes kind of has that too, but at the same time, like not in the same way. Like the stories sort of cross over at some point, and the stories are a little similar, but at the same time, like the way the adventure games did it, and that 06 does it, is that like everyone's sort of doing their own thing, and then like they cross here and there, and sometimes their stories bleed over into each other, and it just like gives us different perspectives. I'm like, okay, so this was happening while this other thing in the story was happening. But another thing I like about it is that the story has potential. And it does. I think another series that I would really like to do in a similar vein to this, even though I'm increasingly finding out that this is a lot more difficult than I thought. But like, I really want to do a sort of series where I talk about what I would have done differently for the story. Because I feel like for a really long time, I think one of the things that people have said, and that I've said too, is that 06 has a story that you just can't fix and that you can't salvage. And while I still think that ultimately that's true, there are elements to it that I'm just like, oh, if you had maybe done this instead. Like, sometimes you need to get rid of entire elements, and that like just deconstructs the entire story. Like, for example, I think Elise is a character that you don't really need. You kind of do need her for this sort of story, but at the same time, it's just like, I think that just getting rid of that character altogether helps a lot, because you still have like Silver, you still have Blaze, you can even still have Mephiles, you can have the concept of Solaris and all that stuff. I mean, heck, you can still have like Elise as a character. It's just her importance shouldn't be that big, and her like relationship to Sonic shouldn't be that close. I feel like having her be more of like a throwaway character would have made her more effective, which is weird to say, because I feel like sometimes you expect characters to have more importance in a story, but I feel like Elise is someone that there's value in the things that we learn about her, because even then you learn that she's someone who's been sort of sheltered her whole life, and Sonic helps her loosen up and like find out more about who she wants to be, aside from just like the princess of Soliana. And so that's nice, but at the same time, like, I don't think it justifies having her as a character. Regardless, my point is that like something that I like is that there's a story there regardless that has potential, and there are a lot of elements to that story that I really like. Again, Silver and Blaze. Mephiles is problematic, but at the same time, he can still work as a villain, because I think that he's definitely one of the most evil villains that we've had, because he's like almost as if like Metal Sonic from Heroes had a presence all throughout the story instead of just like being behind the scenes the entire time. Because the adventure games, Adventure 1 has Eggman, and he's like, okay, well, you know he's the bad guy the entire time, or you have Chaos, but like Chaos doesn't really say anything. Adventure 2 is just like you have an entire team that you're playing as, so you know like what their motivations are, and they're the villains, quote unquote, of the story. But like Mephiles is just a recurring dude who you see all the time, and you're just like, okay, well, I know he's bad, I know what he's thinking. You know, you see the way that he manipulates the characters, or tries to manipulate the characters. So it's just like, I feel like that's a very interesting sort of step up from the villain. I mean, actually, it kind of reminds me of Black Doom in a way, where it's like he has a lot more presence throughout the story, and you know he's the bad guy, and you see like how he's manipulating Shadow, or like what he's doing to sort of make him do what he wants. Mephiles is kind of similar in that regard, and so I'm not saying that Black Doom was done well necessarily, but I think that can be done well because it's an interesting character. I think if you gave him better motivations, I mean, granted, you could say that about anything. Like, if you did this better, you would have a better game. It's like, well, yeah, obviously, but what I mean is that, like, it's not totally unsalvageable. I think that there are elements there. I mean, hell, this is one of the times that they did a time travel story, and it was messy. It was definitely messy, but, like, they could have made it work. They could have done something with the time travel that definitely worked. Even if it did leave certain questions, it still could have been enjoyable. And so I like that it's a story that has potential. I guess speaking of Mephiles is primarily like Shadow's antagonist for his campaign. Even though Eggman is there in his story, Mephiles is more Shadow's villain or antagonist. Iblis, like the other part of Solaris, is Silver's antagonist, and Eggman just remains Sonic's antagonist throughout his campaign. And I like that they each have their own antagonist to sort of play off of, and each that's what I'm talking about, like when I say they each have their own story that like intersect here and there, because they're all related. Eggman's trying to unleash Solaris, but he doesn't really know what that means just yet. He's trying to figure that out. He wants to capture Mephiles, and that leads into like where Shadow fits into the story. And Eggman realizes, like, okay, I need Mephiles, but I also need, like, Elise, because she has the flames, and that's where Sonic comes in. But, like, those flames are what caused Iblis to, like, destroy the future, and that's where Silver comes in, and that's his villain. So it's, like, in a way, like, when you kind of lay it out like that, it's almost like it's actually well thought out. I like that those are all intertwined, even though they're on their own for the most part of their own individual journeys. They're all related still. I just think that that's cool. I guess going back to the way that the story is written and everything, like the game isn't written the best, that's no secret, but at the same time, something that I think is done well is the way that the characters are portrayed. Not every single one of them necessarily, but like the main three I think are portrayed really well. You know, Sonic is heroic and he's confident. I don't know if I'd say that he's at his best necessarily, but he is portrayed really well in terms of the things that make him likable, in my opinion, because I think which Sonic you like is really dependent on your own personal taste, because like there have been different sort of iterations and different interpretations of the character depending on the actor. But you know, I know a lot of people liked this era of Jason Griffith's Sonic, and I don't know, there was something about him that I was never too invested in. But as I was like watching the footage, it made me realize, like, well, he's still very Sonic in this though, because he's like, he's just a nice dude. Like, he's not cocky, he's not like cracking jokes all the time. He's not like the oh yeah, I'm all cool, like the sort of cartoon version that everyone does. He's just very heroic in like a very noble way, and that's just a very likable version of the character. He's not, I mean, I suppose he's like a little milquetoast, but he's milquetoast in like the best way, where you're just like, man, you just gotta like that Sonic. It's weird. Shadow is definitely my favorite character, and we gotta get into like, I didn't realize how much I liked Shadow in this game until like I was writing like the outline for this. I guess I'll get Silver out of the way. Like, he's not bad. It's just that he's like the weakest, I think, of the three, because and he gets away with that because he's like a newer character. So it doesn't really matter that the writers didn't really know what his place in the world was yet. So like, they didn't know, is he heroic? Is he like, you know, what, he's naive, but like, you know, what does that mean? Like, they were still trying to figure out Silver, and that's fine. You know, like, I think he's not unlikable necessarily, in my opinion. I think that there's a lot to his character. I think that that's his naivete is understandable, considering like the world that he comes from, and knowing that it's like a broken, desolate future. Like, you can understand that, yeah, maybe he is very prone to believing someone that has like the solution to solve all his problems. The solution to solve all his problems. Not what I meant to say. You know, a solution to all his problems. Like, if someone comes around with that, it's just like, well, yeah, why wouldn't I take that? Why do I don't have a reason to not trust anybody. And I think a lot of people see him as stupid for that reason, and I kind of understand that, but at the same time, it's just like, it's circumstance and it's context, and I think that definitely makes things different. It's no excuse, mind you, but like, you can still tell that he's a good guy at his core. Like, you know that he's not acting in bad faith. You know that he's like a good person at the end of the day, because he's not acting in his own best interest. He's acting in the best interest of the world. Like, yeah, he wants to live in a better world, but he's ultimately doing it for the greater good, you know? Like, and if he feels like, okay, I need to get rid of Sonic, then it's just like, okay, I'm not just doing that for me. I'm not doing that for an evil reason. Even if it's not like a good thing to do, it's not like for an evil reason. But Shadow, it astounds me like how excellently they got Shadow's character, because his characterization in the game is so good. And like, not just Shadow, but the entirety of Team Dark. I could, and this is what I wanted. I wanted to like get into why I think Team Dark is just so good. And it sort of requires me to go almost beat by beat in terms of what Shadow's story is. And I didn't really outline that. I'm trying to go on like what I remember. Because Shadow's campaign starts off with him going into White Acropolis, and like, the first thing you like learn about Shadow is that he's part of Gun now, which if you've been following the games up until this point, you probably think is really, really weird, because it's just like, okay, why would Shadow be part of Gun when like Gun, they locked him up, and like in Shadow, that was like, he was basically like fighting against them, or maybe with them, depending on how you played, but like, it was mostly understood that like Shadow and Gun were not like friends, so now he's working for them. And I think that it just represents that Shadow has like moved on. And you like, that's so weird to say about a Sonic character. You know, I don't think I can stress enough how like deep that is for a Sonic character, but I think that that's why people enjoy. I was thinking about it before I recorded, and I realized that like growing up, Sonic was like my first exposure, or like the Sonic series, especially the adventure games, were like my first exposure to what a story could be. Even if they're not great stories, it's still an introduction to like, hey, you know, this is what a potentially deeper or darker story could be. And, you know, I think that might have been what got me into storytelling in games. And Sonic doesn't really need to do a lot of growing, because not that he's infallible necessarily, but like, he's a very generic hero, and you inherently like him because he's a positive force, and there's not much that needs to be changed about him. But with Shadow, he starts out, you know, explicitly as like a bad guy. So it's about understanding where he's coming from, and that's sort of his adventure in Adventure 2. And it's a story about like redemption for him in Adventure 2, and about understanding what Maria's ultimate wish was. And then in Heroes, because like of his popularity, they brought him back, and they're just like, well, what do we do with him? And so Shadow, I mean, not Shadow, but Heroes doesn't really explore Shadow as a character too much. I think it's Team Dark is still like the most interesting of all the campaigns in Heroes. I think that's why they also made Shadow, to like explore that a little bit more, even if they did make it really convoluted. But Shadow definitely like closes that chapter of like, okay, it's time to move on. You know, you have to forgive and forget. And like, that's surprisingly deep for a Sonic game. And here, and 06 sort of furthers that, because it like lets you know like, okay, he's working for Gun now. He's put that behind him. Like, Maria doesn't bother him anymore. The professor doesn't bother him anymore. The fact that he was like imprisoned or like he was in stasis for 50 years, like that, he doesn't care about that anymore, because like that's not who he is. He's reinvented himself. And just overall, like, it's so fascinating to see that character grow. Ironically, it's the one character that feels like it honors the legacy of the games at the time, where Sonic was more of a character meant to honor the classic version of Sonic, where it was more level to level, which is still kind of a neat comparison. Yeah, so what I was saying there was that Sonic feels definitely more straightforward. And it's kind of what I was saying, where he's like kind of the generic hero that you just sort of like because they're the hero. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially not for like a series aimed at kids. But like, it's very by the books, very like, okay, well, this happened, now I gotta go to this level, and this happened, I gotta go to this level now. So like, it feels very straightforward, whereas with Shadow, it honestly felt like they were looking at the more modern stuff at the time, so like the adventure games, Shadow, the Hedgehog, the game itself, and they were just like, okay, what can we take from this, and how do we write these characters based on that? Oh, it's so hard to form my thoughts, but like when I was looking through this footage and I saw them together in that first scene where like Mephiles gets unleashed from the Scepter of Darkness, it hit me, and I don't know how it never dawned on me that like, oh my god, this is like the first time that these three characters are like in the same scene together, because like they didn't really have a moment. I guess you could technically say that they were all together at the end of Shadow, or like there was a moment in Heroes at the end where they were all like in the same space, but like, this is a scene specifically where like it's Rouge, Shadow, and Eggman. No one else around. I guess the like Eggman's robots, whatever, and Mephiles after the fact. But like the way that Eggman, because Eggman's there specifically to get the Scepter of Darkness back from Rouge, because she stole it for Gun, and like Shadow was there helping Rouge get out of there. But like there's this underlying respect that Eggman has towards it, because like he says hi to like Rouge and Shadow. It's like, hello, my dear Rouge. It's been a long time. And of course, you too, Shadow. And it's just like, yeah, these characters used to work together. That's so weird. Like, you're so used to them. You're so used to Eggman being like the bad guy at the beginning of a Sonic game, right? Even if he's like your friend at the end of it, or he's like an ally at the end of the game, you're so used to him being an opposing force at the beginning. And he's a very minor antagonist in Shadow, because like he's there, but Shadow and him have really no beef. So seeing them all in that scene is really cool, and just remembering like, oh yeah, these three used to work together. That's weird. The continuation of like how they chose to honor like the legacy of what Shadow's character was. Like they bring back the vehicles, which I don't think anybody was asking for. Like, nobody was going gaga over, you know, the vehicles in Shadow the Hedgehog. I don't even know if people really liked them in Shadow. I remember thinking they were awesome at the time. Nowadays, I have no reason to use a vehicle, but the fact that they decided to bring that over into 06, I think was kind of cool. Even if like you could do without them and nothing would really change, but like just the fact that they were like, you know what, yeah, Shadow, we don't want to ignore the fact that Shadow happened. He would still like use these vehicles. Why not? Like he would use like the water bike or like the air glider or whatever, and it's just like, that's kind of neat. It's I don't know. So there's a plot point in the game where Rouge goes to Omega and Shadow's stuck in the future. Like, Shadow's basically fucked. He's in the future, stuck with Mephiles, and he has no way of getting back. He uses Chaos Control with Sonic, and like Sonic, Knuckles, Tails, Rouge, they go back to the past/present day, whatever, and Shadow sticks behind because he sees Mephiles. And the portal closes, and so like he's kind of screwed because he doesn't have a Chaos Emerald anymore, which itself is kind of stupid. But what they did with Omega is really cool, because like Rouge specifically goes out and like looks for Omega. Earlier on in the game, they see Omega and they're just like, what the hell? What is he doing here? That's our friend. Like, and they try to wake him up, but he's not waking up. It's sort of the past influences the future. Again, that's the problem with like time travel stories, but I think it was really smart that Rouge, amidst this situation, is just like, I know what to do. I'm gonna go to Omega, have him like shut down for 300 years or whatever, and have the Chaos Emerald inside him to give to Shadow in the future so he can get back. Which, I mean, doesn't work out incredibly well because what the hell was he gonna do with that? But it was still a smart move. Like, theoretically, like, it was just such an interesting, like, okay, I did that. I didn't realize why, like, my friend was shut down and, like, why he still existed in this time. It's because I did that. I put him into sleep mode for all these years in order to save Shadow in the future. Under different circumstances, that would have paid off so much better, but it's still, like, a really cool plot device, and it's still a really smart move. And it's funny because that leads into another really good scene which showcases how Shadow has grown as a character. Mephiles is trying to coerce him into joining him in destroying the world by showing him that in the future he gets imprisoned by humans. And even through the silly mocap, you can see that Shadow has like a moment of disappointment. Like, damn it, this is happening again. I'm being treated as a monster again. But he maintains his resolve and basically says that he's in control of his destiny and like he's gonna do what he wants regardless of like what the world says. Which, I mean, can be interpreted as sort of a negative thing, but like it shows his resolve and being like, okay, if the world wants to fight me, I'm gonna fight back because I've been through this before. I can do it again. But it really goes to show that he's not going to be manipulated this time. He doesn't harbor resentment for humanity the way that like Mephiles tries to get him to. He's just like, no, I'm done with that. I fight for myself. And you know, if they imprison me, they probably had a good reason for it. And what I love the most about it is that they don't make it a big deal. Like, they don't show all these flashbacks. Because like Shadow kind of did that, and it was fine in Shadow because it acknowledges like, oh yeah, Adventure 2 happened. But like with 06, it's so much more subtle, where it's just like they don't show anything through flashbacks, but you can feel like he knows this. He knows like, oh my god, I'm being treated this way again. I don't want to be treated this way again, but it doesn't matter because I'm past that. Like, I've grown. And then they don't need to show that. Well, because they're showing it in their own way. They don't need to like explicitly show it. They show it through like Shadow's body language, which again, it impresses me that like they were able to do that even with the silly mocap. Like the mocap, I don't know what, that's another thing that's related to like Adventure 2 specifically, because with Heroes and Shadow, they got rid of like the mocap actors, but with 06 they brought it back from Adventure 2. I don't know why they did that, but like that's just something else that sort of relates the two games. Omega is so like ignored by Sonic Team nowadays, or like by Sega. I have another point in this outline where I talk about like how Omega this is the only time in the whole series, aside from like the mobile games or like the sports games, where you get to play as Omega by himself, excuse me. And I like that they don't forget that Omega happened, because it's so weird, because I definitely want to talk about Forces in the future, and Forces really felt like it was them trying to, I don't want to get into like Forces. I mean, I do want to get into Forces, but not right now. Aside from like Sonic Colors on the DS, Forces is like and even then that's not like a modern game anymore, but it's the one like modern Sonic game where Omega is really there. And so like I like that 06 is like, yeah, no, Omega was a thing, and Omega like deserves to be a thing, because he does. Like I think Omega definitely deserves to be like part of the Sonic mythology. I think having and I can like talk about this further in like a Sonic Heroes video, but like having a character that's one of Eggman's robots that really hates Eggman is not only just like really funny, but it's just so interesting because it really shows that they have their own agency, that they have like a mind of their own. They're not just like AI to be controlled by Eggman. And so like I like that 06 utilizes Omega, even if it's like a small role. I think that's really cool that they don't like ignore the fact that he happened. So this is another really, really good scene. And again, it astonishes me that all this is happening in like Shadow's story, but like another moment that I love in this story, in this game, is after they come back to the present day. There's like an Omega exclusive level where like he's going through, again, the beach level that I can't remember the name of. And like you're tracking down Mephiles, and he like starts shooting him, and Mephiles tells him like, hey, you're the one that captures Shadow in the future. And Omega feels like devastated about it, because he's just like, oh like there's no proof, but like he still feels like, oh shit, I'm guilty of that. I imprisoned my friend. And there's this like meeting with Shadow, Rouge, and Omega where they're talking about, or well, I guess like they sort of cut that part, but like it's presumed that Omega tells them what Mephiles said to him, and Rouge is just, she's like voicing her concerns, and she's like saying how unfair it is that that's what happens, and that no matter how much Shadow fights for like good, they're still going to like treat him like a monster. And I think the thing that's most telling about that scene, and why it stands out to me, and why I think it's like so sweet, and why I love these characters, specifically Team Dark, is that like up until this point, you know, Rouge has been an agent of her own will. You know, like she doesn't really, aside from like Gun when jewels are involved, she doesn't really like fight for, she's not loyal to anyone but herself. And this is the first time I think ever that we see that like she's loyal to Shadow because she's best friends with him. Like it's not about, you know, what Shadow can do for me. And I think that it really builds upon what we saw in Adventure 2, especially like what we saw in Heroes, a little bit in Shadow, but like this is the moment where she's just like, no, you're my best friend. And even if the world fights against you, I'm going to be on your side. You know, like you're not going to be alone because I'm your best friend. And like that's so like deep for a Sonic game. Like you would think that like, oh, the idea of friendship has always been there because Sonic and Tails and Knuckles and whatever, but it's just like, for some reason, coming from these characters who we know are like kind of selfish and they're brooding and they're like edgy, knowing that they're the ones that are like having this sweet moment, it's just so nice. And that's reflected again in like the last cutscene of the game, because all three members of Team Dark, like they're fighting Mephiles, and there's this entire horde of Mephiles clones that Mephiles creates. And again, Mephiles is trying to get through Shadow's head and being like, oh, you know, you're going to let the humans have that. They're going to imprison you. Like he's offering him like revenge and like the opportunity to get back at them before they get to him. And Shadow's just like, I don't care about that. Like I'm going to fight. Like it's when he's taking off his inhibitor rings, which we've never seen him do before or since, but like, it's still a really cool scene. But he's talking about like how it doesn't matter to him if that's true because he's still going to keep fighting. And what I love about that scene, having seen it again, is that like before he says that, like before he says the line, if the world chooses to be my enemy, I'm going to fight like I always have, Omega and Rouge sort of huddle up next to him. And I think that what a lot of people might interpret from that line is that like he's going to keep on keeping on, like he's going to keep fighting people if they choose to fight him. But seeing that scene again, it sort of makes me think that more so what he means is that he's going to keep fighting the way he always has, and that's with his friends, because like he blasts through the enemies and like you see all of them together, like they're doing this together, thick and thin, and it's just like it's so they're like better friends than Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are, and it's so nice. And I don't know what it is. I just love the way that these characters are done in this game. Going back to Silver a little bit, I wanted to talk about his gameplay, I think is what I have outlined in the script. I really like it because Sonic 06's physics feel wonky anyway. Silver feels like the most deliberate of the three, and I would have enjoyed to play a game that was more focused on his telekinesis because I think it's actually cool to try and problem solve a level by seeing what you can interact with in the level. I actually really like that Silver isn't fast like Sonic or Shadow. It gives Silver more of an identity. And it's true. Like when I was playing, I mean, the first time I played, I've only played the game I think twice, and the first time I played it, as well as the second time, like I was just thinking to myself, like, this is fun. Like it's not fast-paced like Sonic and Shadow are, but it feels like it doesn't need to be, and I like that. I wish that it had utilized more of the telekinesis for like puzzles and stuff, because the puzzles that are there aren't great, obviously, but at the same time, it's just like there's so much. Again, going back to the whole idea of potential, there's so much potential there, and I think that if they had made like a game dedicated to Silver that was like based on that like puzzle solving through telekinesis, it could have been like a great, because I mean you have Sonic and you have like the fast-paced platforming, whatever, and it's just like that's fine, because I feel like Shadow was sort of the same thing where like they wanted to keep that same Sonic spirit of like fast-pacedness or just that feeling of fast while introducing other elements. I think that Silver is a good character to sort of explore the idea of like different play styles in the Sonic world where you don't necessarily have to be fast. And I know that sounds blasphemous, but like there's no reason you can't make him his own character. And I think that definitely would make him more interesting, as if like you try to explore what he could do as a hero on his own, in his own right, with his powers. Because it's definitely something. Like there's something there that you have that is cool and it's fun, you know. Like I know a lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was fun. But even more fun than Silver was Blaze, and Blaze was like the next thing I had in my outline after that. And Blaze is tough because her role is super minimal in the story, so you kind of forget that she's even in the game, but she's like really important to the story. Or well, I mean, kind of in the overall scheme of things, not necessarily the story. Her levels are short and sweet. She controls a lot like Sonic, but in her own way. It's like, because there's the fire element, right? But at the same time, it's just like, she feels like Sonic without like the fluff of Sonic's levels. And that's what make Blaze so fun. And I think she only has I think she has like a Crisis City level, and she has I forget what the first level in Sonic's story is called, but like the beach level.
The Wave Ocean, head to Wave Ocean it became.
That's her first level, I think. And that one, it's just so fun. like, it feels short because the rest of the levels feel so long, but at the same time, it's just like, man, that was 2.5 minutes. That's like a great length for a Sonic level. and I like that there's a thing that happens in the story at the end of Silver's campaign where, like, it's mentioned somewhere in the middle of the story that, like, the flames can only be sealed by, like, royalty. And so that's why Silver can't, like, absorb the flames of destruction himself at the end of his story. Blaze can do it, though. And so, like, I like that they keep that sort of bit of continuity from Sonic Rush, where they're just like, yeah, no, she's a princess. But at the same time, because this, I'm assuming this isn't, like, in the same continuity as the Rush games, they sort of gloss over that. They sort of because they never call Blaze a princess. So it's just like, that sort of comes out of nowhere. It's like, oh, wait, Blaze is royalty of what? So, like, it's cool that they kept that part of her character, but they also never explain it. But I still like that they kept it, though. I think it's a cool, like, yeah, we know that she's a princess. And it makes sense for her to do that. And, like, her sacrifice is meaningful. If not for, like, what happens at the end of the game, her sacrifice actually means something. Like, even though Silver was the one that was willing to make that sacrifice, Blaze was the one that made it. And so, like, it hurts, because you're just like, oh, man, Blaze was Silver's only friend in this world, and now she's gone. You know, like, she's... And that sucks. Like, I just really like that they went ahead and made that sacrifice. Here I mentioned that while Shadow and Silver's upgrades seem arbitrary, I like Sonic's ability gems being broken as part of why they're fun, because they can still be tricky to use. And that's true. Like, when I first played the game, I didn't realize that they were they were meant to be limited until, like, I saw trivia and stuff online. But Sonic's gems are fun. And, like, on the same point, like I mentioned later on in another point, that, like, it's cool to use Shadow's Chaos Spear as part of his natural moveset. It's weird that you, like, have to upgrade it, and it's like, because in other games, in Shadow, for example, you use it during your super form, like in the last fight. In Adventure 2, you use it during, I don't even know if you ever use it in Heroes. I don't think you do. But, like, in Adventure 2, it's, like, exclusive to the 2-player mode, or when you're fighting against him in the last boss fight. But it's like a special move. It's not part of his natural moveset. So it's cool that it's part of his natural moveset in this game, and that, like, it works like a paralyzer to the enemies. But yeah, like, all Sonic's gem abilities are neat. Like, not all of them are incredibly useful. You know, like, you're not gonna use all of them, but, like, they're still tricky to use, and, like, the exploits that you can use with them are still, like, not... They're simple, and, like, they're not hard to pull off, but they're also, like, not easy to do when you don't know what you're doing. I do miss being able to play as all these characters. That's something that, like, you just miss in Sonic games nowadays. That, like, I think a lot of people complained about, oh, there are too many characters that you play as, and that's why, like, they got rid of it in Unleashed. But, like, I miss it, man. I miss having all these characters have, like, a purpose. Because nowadays you only play them in, like, sports games or like in the racing games, and that's fine. But, like, they all have such unique abilities, and I miss that. And that's something that I like that 06 does. I like Crisis City. The other levels are fine, but there's something about the apocalyptic setting that we've rarely ever gotten in a Sonic game. That's true. And I feel like that's definitely a reason why they brought it back in Generations. Like, it's got great music. I think it's a really cool setting, because it's not just a fire level, it's like an apocalypse level. And not only do you not really see that much in games, I feel like in platformers and stuff, but, like, in Sonic games, that's really rarely a thing you see. Like, there's the future levels in Sonic CD, but there's just something so specific about the way Crisis City is laid out that it makes it so unique, and it's cool. I like Crisis City. Like, if you ask me to recall a specific song in 06, like one of the level themes, it would be tough. They're not, like, incredibly memorable to me, but at the same time, that's not to say that it's bad. It's definitely not bad. 06 had a great soundtrack. Like, there's so many songs on it, especially the vocal tracks. So I didn't grow up with an HD console around the time that 06 came out. So, like, I had GameCube. I didn't have Xbox. I didn't have PS3, whatever. I didn't play 06 until I think I was an adult when I played 06. So, like, that train had passed. People had played it. People had hated it already. And so I sort of knew what to expect. But I played Shadow, and one of my favorite songs from Shadow was All Hail Shadow. Like, and I still love that song. It's still, like, my favorite, like, Shadow theme from that game. So the fact that they make that his theme in this game, but, like, a Crush 40 version, is just beautiful. It's just, and, like, they've made that Crush 40 version from 06 his de facto theme, like, for the rest of the series. Like, I was checking other clips to see, like, where they reuse it, and they reuse it a lot. They use it in Generations, they use it in Forces. They use, like, take it all away from Adventure 2 sometimes too, but like it's sort of interchangeable between those two. And it's funny because Eggman's theme also stemmed from this game, and like they alternate between like EGGMAN from Adventure 2 and the theme in this one. Da, 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 da. Like that theme, like they reuse it in Unleashed and Colors. I think it might be in Lost World and Forces as well, but I'm not sure. It might not be, but I know that they reuse that theme, and that's from this game. The Chaos Emeralds. The Chaos Emeralds are something else that I really like. Like, the way that they're used in this story sort of furthers their lore from the other games, which... with Heroes, it's funny how they're needed for, like, the final boss, but story-wise, there's really no reason anybody would have them. And that's because, like, the Chaos Emeralds are relegated to special stages, and much like they are in the classic games. In Shadow, really, it's just like, get them. Hell, you get some of them in the levels, you know? With Adventure 1, 2, and this game, they're sort of part of the plot. Adventure 1, they're really MacGuffin-y, because they only really matter at the end. And Adventure 2, they're still MacGuffin-y, but they're useful here and there. With 06, you sort of explore a little bit more like what you're able to do with them. And it's stupid. It's stupid that, you know, you can use 2 Chaos Emeralds to travel through time. But I mean, that's better than just having them exist and do nothing with them. You know, like, it's not just Shadow using Chaos Control. It's like they have a... And that opens the door to like, okay, well, what else do they do? Like, what else can these emeralds be used for? I think that's pretty neat. This was a little hard to explain why I think this one's cool, but like, I really like that Sonic never meets Mephiles in the game. Because like, in Silver's story, you know that like Mephiles is trying to get Silver to kill Sonic for him. And you never find out like, and this is like a thing that's not great about the game, but like, you never find out, I mean, ultimately the reason is to make Elise cry, but you know how Mephiles knows about Sonic, all that shit, whatever. The fact of the matter is, Sonic never meets Mephiles, who is like pretty much the ultimate bad guy across all 3 stories. He only meets him like during the final story segment where he kills Sonic. And that's just so like sudden to Sonic. Like, it catches him so off guard because he just doesn't know who this guy is or what. I think that's kind of cool. I wish it had been done in a better way. But like, the fact that these two never meet until that moment, I don't know. Like, you could argue that that's bad storytelling, and it's just like, oh, they should have met. Like, there should have been kind of like... I like that they don't meet. I like that there's no reason for it. There's no like, hey, who are you? There's no words exchanged. He just like offs him, and like that makes it so dark and so sad. And I mean, hell, the fact that they had like the courage to like kill, I mean, quote unquote, kill Sonic, that's still respectable. Like, I don't know. I feel like no other game would do, like, it would always be like the psych out, but this one's like, no, he's dead. He's straight up like not alive anymore. And to that effect, that's another moment that I really love in this game, is where they're all like lamenting Sonic's death, and they're just like, oh my god, he's dead. And I think that's another really good moment where they understand Shadow as a character, writing-wise, because you can tell that he values Sonic as an ally, because he there's no point in the story where like Sonic and Shadow fight each other. They're working together from the beginning. And like, Shadow's not an asshole about it either. He's not like, oh, I have to work with this idiot. No, he's just like, yeah, no, Sonic is a cool dude, like, and I'm gonna work with him. One of my favorite lines from the whole game is when they're trying to like figure out how they're gonna get rid of Solaris, and Eggman tells him like, oh, you need to destroy him in the past, present, and future, because he spans across, you know, all time and space. And Silver's like,
if you say it exists in the past, present, and future, I'll destroy them all at once.
And Shadow's just like,
certainly, it might have been possible if he was still alive.
I think that nowadays they would have been like, yeah, whatever, he's not as cool as I am. But like, in this, here, he flat out acknowledges like, no, we need this guy. Like, he's strong, he's powerful. Like, I'm good, but like, Sonic's on another level. And like, just that level of respect and knowing that like, he doesn't hate Sonic, he doesn't like resent him or anything. He respects him as like another protagonist, I guess. They fought together before, and now like the world just seems a little bit more bleaker. Jesus. It just seems a little bit bleaker now that Sonic is gone. And like the fact that you can tell that Shadow's sort of like torn up about it too, like in his body language and like his voice, you can tell that like he's lamenting it. And I love that. Okay, so End of the World. End of the World represents something that I kind of talked about a little bit earlier, but like it represents something that I really miss in Sonic games. And it was really only done in Adventure 2. Heroes does it kind of, not in the same way, but like, because you have Canon's Core in Adventure 2, and it's like a super level where you play as all the characters and everyone's contributing in their own way. with Heroes, you have the Metal Madness fight, but that's a boss fight. That's not really a level. And like everyone really plays the same. You're not really using like any individual character's strengths against it. Everyone just has like their own pattern, but you're essentially just doing the same thing. End of the World is a lot like Canon's Core in that like everyone splits up and you're using everyone's individual, aside from like Blaze, you're playing as every single playable character aside from Blaze and Sonic, and like everyone's using their own individual, you know, skill set and abilities, and like the level is catered to them. And that's just stuff that you don't get nowadays because you don't play as those characters, and I miss that. And on the subject of Solaris, the concept of a villain who is so powerful that they're just transcending time and space, and like they exist at all points in time, whatever. They're omnipresent, omnipotent, whatever. That sounds like fanfiction-y bullshit. That sounds so bad. But that kind of makes him a cool villain, admittedly. I think that makes him kind of badass. And like that I don't know. Like that it's pretty damn cool, if I'm being honest. Like the concept of like, okay, the only way we can beat him, and that's impossible because like time is if we're talking about like the metaphysical concept of time, like it exists forever. You can never go too far in the past. You can never go too future in the future. The present is always changing, but like having that concept of like he exists in these different time frames at the same time, and that it's possible to go into those times and defeat him from there is really cool. And they do like, I feel like the final battle with like when they go super represents that, because like you have Shadow who was born 50 years ago, and like his main story in 06 is that like he goes to the past and seals Mephiles. Like he represents the past in that fight. Silver's very like you know, self-explanatory. He's from the future. He's fighting for the future, everyone's future, whatever. And then with Sonic, he's like I said earlier, he's the one that's like living day to day. We're going level to level. He's fighting Eggman. It's like very business as usual. I feel like that's how he represents like the present. And that's another, like that fight honestly is another thing that you can relate to Adventure, because with Heroes, right? With Heroes, it sort of borrows that from Heroes, like with the transformation and like how Silver and Shadow become super too. So they do, like they actually become super instead of like with the super form orbs that Knuckles and Tails get. It almost feels like that scene in Heroes. But in Adventure 1, like Sonic was the only one doing the super form thing. In Adventure 2, you have Sonic and Shadow alternating, and you alternate between them so that like you don't lose your rings, because you can't collect rings during the fight the way that you do in Adventure 1. But you alternate between the two characters once you've run out of rings. And they even say like, hey, you know, your ring count's low. You want to switch to me? They do the same thing in I was going to call it Adventure 3. They do the same thing in 06. You know, like when you're running low on rings, the next character's like, hey, switch with me because you're running low. And again, it just feels like a natural progression. Like Adventure 1 had just Sonic, Adventure 2 had Sonic and Shadow, who like Shadow was like the new Hedgehog. They give him a super form. Now with 06, you have Silver, who's the new Hedgehog. He has a super form, and like you're fighting him in very much the same way. And I'd even argue that it's better than Adventure 2 was, because you're using their individual abilities in order to fight Solaris, whereas like in Adventure 2, Sonic and Shadow basically play the same. Like there's no difference between the two characters, whereas in 06, you know, each of them have their own sort of strengths against the fight, which are not super clear, but I still like that they bothered to make that a difference. A lot of the quotes from that final boss fight are really cool, like Shadow's
a super dimensional being. This way can be a fair fight.
Like that's cool. That's cocky, but that's pretty sick. There's one that Sonic says that I don't know why, but I really like. I like the emotion behind the line, and just there's a poeticness to it that I really love. I don't think Silver gets a line like this. I don't think he does. He gets like a really throwaway line like, I fight for the present, or I fight for the future, everyone's future, something like that. But Sonic's
present day, the here and now that you've stolen, time to take it back.
There's something so cool about that. I don't know why. I love that line. I guess one last thing that I can bring up in terms of like what I love about the game. I might not even make like a script next time, or I might not even make an outline with my points. Because the thing is, like, I don't want to forget anything, but like this just felt a little bit more structured and a little bit more, you know, almost too structured. But like, there's one last thing that I really love about the game, and it's funny because it's rooted in something, or it's rooted in a scene rather, that I really hate. And it's like the next to last scene, not the CGI cutscene with Sonic running through Soliana and Elise not remembering who he is, but the one before that where Elise blows out Solaris. And it's the music from that scene. They play a string version of Elise's theme called My Destiny. And god damn it, I hate that scene because it's so the dialogue is so stupid and it invalidates everything that happened in the adventure, but the way the music is played during that scene is just so fucking well done, because like they're having this conversation and like Sonic says, I also really hate the dialogue in that scene, but with what Sonic is saying and the way that like the music plays out, God, I can't lie, it gives me chills. And I'm like almost embarrassed to say that just because it's like it's coming from this game and like from this scene particularly, but like just the way that he says,
Elise, just smile.
And like the last strings start playing. When I mentioned it before, but I think I've only played this game twice. When I played it the first time, I really just wanted it to be over. So I didn't really pay much attention to Elise's theme. I didn't pay, I was done. I was checked out. But when I played it again, when I did it for the Everything Wrong With, I paid a lot more attention to it. And I realized how much I love that song. Like, it's so unlike a Sonic game, but it's just so pretty. It's such a pretty song, especially like the melody particularly. Like the lyrics, I still like the lyrics, but the melody itself of My Destiny it's wonderful. I forgot that they actually brought it back for the 30th anniversary orchestra, and kudos, because like it's such a pretty song, especially like when played with an orchestra. It's so pretty, and I love the way that the music is laid out in that scene particularly. I think that if you look at anything in terms of media, like there's a lot of media that people don't like and that people shit on, and that people, they always look at the negative side of things. And there's a lot of that to Sonic games, but I really enjoy talking about that. Like, because I talked about things that I don't like probably more than I wanted to, but the only reason I talked about them was because I wanted to really bring home the point that there are things in this game that I really do like. And that despite how not great the game is, how bad it is, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, how bad the game is, there's still things of value in it. And I think that those things are also really important to look at, because I think that when we're reviewing a game, right, and I wouldn't call this a review, maybe an overview, but like a lot of times in reviews, people focus on like, oh, this sucks, or this is bad, or whatever, right? As if like game companies are going to look at it and be like, okay, don't do this again. Whereas a lot of the time we don't talk enough about the things that we do like. And when we do talk about them, it's very like in passing, or it's like, to its credit, I like this, or I like that. Like, no. I think that we should have more conversations about the things that we enjoy being the main focus. And I don't know, this went on probably longer than I thought it was going to, but I really enjoyed talking about it. And I think next time I'm not going to use such like a such a structured bullet point list, or at least not as detailed, because there was a lot of detail there. I definitely want to be more tangential and like come back to things, and like, I don't know, even if it's out of order, I think that that's just a more genuine experience. And I don't know, I hope you guys liked it too. I genuinely hope you guys liked it too, and that you enjoyed hearing me talk about things that I like, and that, that maybe made you have like a different outlook on Sonic 06, at least in certain extents. Yeah, but like, let me know if you want to see more of stuff like this, what games you'd like me to talk about. I'd love to talk about, there's so many games that I would love to talk about, like what I love about them, because I don't know, man. It's so like soul replenishing to just talk about nice things and to just be myself too, like to not be constrained by a script, and not be like, having to fake my personality. I like being myself sometimes. And that's, I don't know. I feel like that's a conversation for another time, but I enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. So until next time, I guess, stay safe, stay awesome. I love you. This is Char5, signing off.